Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Net podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Joining me today, Helen from the UK. I'm honored to host Peran Truscott. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
AKA Trusc, actually. And you're actually one of the big rappers out of East London. Is that where you're hailing from?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'd call myself a big rapper right yet, but yeah, I live in East London in Woolwich Arsenal currently.
Let's say rapper in the making. We'll try something
Yeah.
like that. So that's pretty cool. Have you lived in London your whole life?
No, not my whole life. So I've been in London for probably approaching 5, 6 years now. Most of that has been in East London. I was in Stratford a bit, I've lived around a lot growing up. So I'm technically Cornish, born in Cornwall, but I've lived pretty much everywhere, Birmingham, even Australia for a stint. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I've interviewed a good number of people out of the UK already. All in and around, like a couple out of London, and then I think one was in Sussex, Bath, or Bayford. I
Yeah.
don't know how they pronounce it too, but all various musicians, but mostly have been drummers, to say the least, too. So you're actually the first hip hop and rap artist I've actually interviewed out of the UK so far. So,
Hope to do the scene justice then.
yep, absolutely. Like I said, how you been? I guess what's the weather been like over there?
Oh, mate, the weather's been absolutely glorious. A very unseasonable, dry mid 20s for the UK. Normally rain, but it's been really sick. But I've been out the country for a little bit, as I was just on summer holidays in Spain for a little while. So yeah.
I guess what were you doing in Spain? Were you visiting family?
No, I am a rock climber in my spare time. So I was doing this thing called deep water soloing, which is where you kind of climb up sea cliffs without any ropes. So if you fall in, you just fall into the sea, and that's the name of the game. And it's the first time I properly gave it a go, and it's really sick there. Yeah.
I have to say, like, actually, how high is it? Actually, is it got a good height to it?
Yeah, so I'd say it's quite high. A small one would be about 5 meters up to about 20 meters. But you start getting scared higher up. I'm not going to lie. So the biggest I took about a 8 meter fall, so an uncontrolled fall, and that was the highest. And that one hurt. Not going to lie, that was a belly slap. But yeah, you often the only way down is to jump. So like 10, 15 meter cliff jumps at the end is fairly standard.
You know, actually, believe it or not, before we actually jumped on this call, actually, they seem to do like some of these videos where it's like the Jamaican sort of guide who's supposed to like give you the rope before those people like jump off those like real high cliffs or something like that. It's like, Jacob, gone. Oh no, Jesus, that sort of thing. That sort of thing too.
Yeah.
So I'm just picturing that, and like once Parrot got he jumped off the side of the cliff. Jesus, that sort of thing.
There's no rope.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my mates had this thing where he'd very happily climb up and then he'd get to the top and be terrified of like jumping off. So he's just stuck there at the top of this cliff for like a few minutes while working out how he's going to get down. So yeah, it's easy. It's easy to go up. It's more scary to come back down again. Is always the thing.
You know, that's the opposite. Like it's easier going up than it is coming down. But whereas
Yeah.
it's the opposite when it comes to like cycling and all the other things. It's so much better going down, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
you know, actually, it was really big into rock climbing, like real back in the day. Obviously, they gave you the harness and everything too, and you're just able to climb up these makeshift rocks and everything. I mean, I
Yeah.
was like a kid in a candy store, to be honest, because they had like a summer camp I had went to too. Did you do anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. As a kid, I loved it. And then I took a break for a little while over university. It was quite expensive going to the gyms and stuff. But then post university, when I got an actual job which paid me, and I moved to London where there's like so many good rock climbing around here, I started going in earnest again. And now it's most of my time. So I go on holidays to like areas to rock climb, and we go down to Portland in the UK, not American Portland, but and all the other sorts of places to really do it. I do it all the time. I love it. Yeah.
Everybody's got a Portland somewhere, to be honest. So
Everyone's got a Portland. Yeah. If it's in the US, the UK probably has it. It's just like one tenth of the size.
yeah, we just mimic what those guys are doing next door.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah.
Actually, did you say what part of Spain you were in?
Yeah, I was in Mallorca actually. Yeah.
Okay, Mallorca. I wasn't sure if it was.
Yeah.
I keep thinking Madrid's probably close to the coastline or something like that too, because actually, I did have a friend from Menorca, and that's one of the islands that's part of the Spanish territories and everything too. Which not sure if he does it. So his name's David. So Dave, when you see this video, tell us if you have any sort of rock climbing or any sort of extreme rock climbing as this guy's doing. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Menorca is right next to me. It's close to Mallorca, same part, same island chain. Madrid is right in the center of Spain, so as far from the coastline as you can get. But yeah, Mallorca and Menorca are quite close to each other in the same island chain. So probably, I'd reckon Menorca has a lot of deep water soloing around there as well.
Probably most likely. It seems like anything with the tropical islands got those sort of extremes or sports going on too. I don't know. My geography's been terrible, to be honest. So I blame COVID for it. So
yeah, it's all right.
Before we do jump into the questions, I guess, how's London been? I guess, did they take the scaffolding off Big Ben?
Oh God. I don't think they have yet. I don't actually know. I don't go that way quite a lot. But no, I think the scaffolding's still there, or at least was until relatively recently. But London's all right. It's busy as always, getting busier and more expensive by the day, it seems like, but that's always the way.
It's all crowded and get all the tourists and everything too. So
yeah, definitely in summer. In summer it's packed. No one comes to London in winter. Unless you like rain and sleet. But in summer it's actually quite nice weather generally. So
we like it when it's warm and hot outside, to be honest. Not when it's like cold and everything too. We're sled riding on like whatever hill we can find here and there. So
yeah.
The reason I did that is I actually came to London a couple years back, and I actually shoot, that was the last vacation before COVID had hit, and then I think it wasn't until close to late in the year, I think it was 2020 when we finally started traveling again. But the last one internationally, at least, had been London and Paris actually, and the downside was the bigger attractions like Big Ben had the scaffolding all on it, and then of course you know about Notre Dame having the roof burned down. So I would say those were the only downsides. But I mean, other than that, London was gorgeous actually.
Yeah, what did you end up doing?
Well, we got to see where the big shots live. Your Queen Elizabeth out in Windsor Castle. And actually got a photo next to one of the troopers who were patrolling the grounds and everything. So nice guy actually. So, I kind of wish we saw the changing of the guards in front of Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
Actually, one guy came up. He was like holding his machine gun, saying like, "Hey, we're not doing the changing of the guards sort of thing too." So we're thinking like, this guy's holding a gun. To be honest, that's kind of scary. So
they're genuinely like they're highly trained. Like the guards are generally like the highest trained soldiers in the UK. Like lots of tourists assume they're kind of props, but they're actually like, I think they're like SAS soldiers who have like been promoted past that and everything. So like the highest trained soldiers around, and any one of them can really beat you up in 100 different ways. But so you see occasional tourist videos of them getting like a bit close or touching the horses or something, and them just getting absolutely smacked. But they also are lovely if you're like nice to them and everything. Yeah,
I figured as much. Otherwise, that's going to be quite an ass whooping, to be honest. In terms of London, because I'm trying to remember off the top of my head everything that we did do, because we stuck mostly in and around London. Actually, we did go to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, believe it or not, which was one of those. There was a couple of museums. What was the one? I think it had the Rosetta Stone in it. I think it was one of the
British Museum.
Yeah. That's at least most of it. What's coming off. I think I had to dig up my phone again, to be honest, but that's at least most of it. And then Paris was real nice. Got to see the Louvre at night. That was actually the biggest one too. The biggest highlight of the trip too, because you know how the Louvre's like all packed during the day. You probably can't even see the Mona Lisa unless you're like really lucky just to get up close and everything too. So we actually just got really up close because we were the only ones there in front of the Louvre and seeing Mona Lisa, and then some of the other ones like Venus and everyone else. So I mean,
that sounds amazing.
Oh it
sounds really sick. Yeah.
Oh, it was worth every penny that I made. I strongly recommend it. So
well,
we could talk about trips throughout the most of the time, but we're here to talk about music. So Peran, welcome to my podcast right here. So the way this is going to work is I'm just going to ask you some questions so we get to know you more both as the rapper, musician, as well as the individual too. So got the questions right here. Ready to roll?
Yeah, okay.
All right. Let's start with the first one. All right. Who is Trusc? How did he become a musician and a rapper later on?
Yeah, Trusc. So
Trusc. I did it again. God damn it.
It's all right.
I think I got to do a penny jar now. Okay. Trusc. I'm trying to remember that.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So started. So I've always loved music. I've spent so long listening to music, like everyone does. But I started quite young, just writing, to be honest, parody songs or just like my favorite music and writing to the same beat and stuff is like, I think how everyone started. And so I was messing around writing terrible songs and tracks and raps for a little while. And then I think it really kicked off when I went to university, where like a lot of people, I went through like quite some hard times, some depression, if I'm honest, and Also got really engaged with the local hip hop society, the hip hop scene in that area. And so I found it as a really useful outlet where I would just put all of my anger, all of my negative thoughts just into music. And so I was writing like a page a day. Ended up making like 3 albums in 3 years or something in that period of time, and then they were all really bad. I will confess, everyone's first tracks are always really terrible, but that really made it like part of who I am, and this process where I make music, I use it as a form of therapy, I use it as a form of self-expression. But yeah, a lot of my thoughts, the first things I do to try and process them is I write it into a song, and sometimes the song sucks and I won't release it. Sometimes it's too personal and I won't release it. But almost always is like if I need to process something, I'll turn it into music first.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Yeah, I actually was checking out some of your music last night, and at least from what I was seeing on the Amazon Music, it looks like you've been releasing mainly just like one song. I guess you also did like remixes for Outtake, that song, and then seems like you only do like one song per like release and something. Is that something you want to do, or you want to try to get to like a full album at some point?
Well, I think it's just, I think I struggle releasing like large bodies of work because I make loads of songs, if I'm honest. And I would say I released 1 in 6, 1 in 7. For reasons maybe I think they're bad, maybe, yeah, most of the time I think they're bad. And so I've got this song that I really like. And then it's like, okay, I can either hold this and try and make another 70 songs to get a 10-song track out, and 10-song album out, and drop that. Or I can try and keep up a semi-regular cadence of releasing 1 song a month, and then in that time I would have made another 5-6 songs to get the next release cadence out. And also, being a small artist, sometimes it can be quite hard to get listeners to listen for more than 30 seconds, to be honest. And so if I can get someone to listen to 30 seconds every month, that's more likely to have a lot more staying power versus I release 1 album a year, let's say, and then they're still only going to listen to 30 seconds of that album. So it's like the listening time I get every time I release a song is so much bigger, and there's so much more impact. And then also with algorithms nowadays, it's like, when I release a track on Spotify, all of my followers, all of my active listeners, they all get notified. And when I release an album on Spotify, they all get that same 1 notification. And so it's like, really, if I'm fighting for the much bigger artists for that like listen time, it's a lot easier to keep like, hey, reminding you, hey, I've existed. Hey, you haven't listened to me in a little while. Come back and check me out. Rather than just dropping 1 big album is a lot harder to get people to listen the whole way through.
I see what you mean, yeah. Especially when it could be like the bigger artists. Who's actually one of the more bigger artists out of the UK? Because you obviously think of Dr. Dre and those guys out of like the US. I guess who's like the big competing artists at the UK?
Oh, there's loads. Currently drill is really big, but before that, like grime has been a big staple of UK hip hop. But yeah, I mean, Stormzy is probably maybe the biggest artist right now. He like Dave as well, or like Skepta, or Jamie is Skepta's literal brother in that case, but also a really big grime artist and someone I listen to. So yeah, quite loads. Probably, yeah, but I've seen this mostly grime and drill nowadays. But yeah, Stormzy is probably the biggest name I can think of.
So you got a lot of competition to deal with there, that's for sure. So.
Oh yeah, most of them are London based as well, and so then there's me as like, I don't really rap. I like listening to grime and drill. My music is not grime and drill, to be honest. It's quite US inspired. But like, yeah, so it's kind of like we've got this really popping scene in London doing this very like specific, cool, edgy sound, and then there's me. But so yeah, lots of competition.
I guess since we're on that topic right now, I guess who would you consider has been your biggest influence?
My biggest influence is, so yeah, like I say, I'm quite US inspired. I really like the chopper sound quite a lot. So Tech Nine was someone who really, I think he was the first person I heard when I was like, actually no, this is he's the guy who made me want to rap. I'd say would be Tech Nine, where I heard his track and I was like, that is just like so unlike anything I've heard before. Like this is what I want to do and want to emulate when I was much younger. And I still listen to him a lot, but he was probably my first big influence. Stuff like Stormzy's early albums as well, like Gang Signs and Prayers as well, is something I listened to a lot when that first dropped, and that was really important to me. But also then there's like newer artists such as Token, I always find really interesting. He's got also that like fast-paced, kind of aggressive chopper flow as well, as something which really inspires me.
As soon as you're saying chopper too, I'm immediately thinking of the whole thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "Get to the chopper," that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
And I also got a kick out of Stormzy, to be honest, because every time I keep hearing, I think of Stormy Daniels, the whole thing. So,
yeah, that's quite a different artist. That
I have to do that. Does he kind of like take a little heat from that now because of that whole, we're going to say scandal or whatever, dramatic events going on because of that?
Sorry, does like what Stormzy take a heat for that?
I'm gonna say yeah, because I feel like, oh, there's a Stormy right there. Oh, they forgot to say Stormzy because it's like a one consonant difference. That's the thing.
No, not at all. Because like I don't know, because Stormy Daniels is very US based drama. I think is a very so it's like so I like across the pond is like I'm aware of it, but I wouldn't say like I really ever think about it. So in a way, unless it's like on a news article, and even then only on a US news site, it wouldn't really be in the UK news very much at all.
I don't know, you tend to get that too if like people like somehow thinking they're putting two and two together, but then it's like not really tying out. So I don't know, but that's pretty cool nonetheless. So I guess when did you start this project? Did you start this right during uni?
By this project, are you talking about like my
your music
my
projects
music?
with Trusc?
Yeah, so Trusc, probably, so I changed, Trusc as an artist, I would say, was born in uni, probably near the end of uni, actually. So that would be about 7 years ago now. But before that, I released music under a lot of different names, small, mostly like silly joking names where I wanted to intentionally preserve my anonymity online, where I was like, I was a minor. I didn't want this potentially catching up with me when if I had a full-time job. I was making silly, often quite rude songs. And then, at uni, it hit a point where I was like, okay, this has gone from like a silly side project to something I care about, something which I think represents me a bit more, and I'm okay having my face attached to it. And so then I changed my name to Trusc, which is, based off my true name. And then that became a lot more of a coherent brand at that point.
You know, I was going to ask about the name too, because I assume you were jumping around with like various ideas and names, because that's normally how it goes. Be like, oh, this kind of resembles me in a way. Then it's like, oh, I see the first 5 letters of my last name. It's Trusc. So it's like, oh, that actually has a nice ring to it too. So it's like, there you go, that sort of thing. Yeah,
it was literally that. It was like, because I went through like 3 or 4 different fairly similar names of like, as always, like when people are spamming with like their first rap names and some of them happen to stick. And then I was like, and then I hit a point where I was like, actually, I actually just want something which represents me in a way that like doesn't sound too corny, but also at the same time is quite easy to remember and unique. And so I was just like, and I know a bunch of rappers or like have things based on their own name, like even Dr. Dre is his actual name. And so I was just experimenting with different ways of to like cut up my name. And then I realized that it's kind of feeling. So my driver's license in the UK has the first 5 letters of your surname on it. And so I just looked at my driver's license, and then that said Trusc, and then a series of letters, and I was like, hey, that actually sounds pretty good. And so that was how I decided on my actual rap name, was based on my driver's license.
That's pretty sweet. Actually, you know what? Since it does start with a T, I wonder if you could actually get away with saying Mr. T, that sort of thing. So, okay.
Yeah, that was joked about for a while, but like it's like really, I think searchability and like search engine optimization is actually really important for small artists. Like if you do a generic name, then someone like Googles you and they're like, oh, if I Google like Mr. T music, I'm still never going to come up. If you Google Trusc music, actually, I'm lucky where I have all the handles associated with that you will find me on every single search on every single platform if you just Google Trusc music. Yeah.
I actually did check out your YouTube channel too, and actually did talk about your little autobiography about like how you jumped around from the UK to Australia and all that too. I guess was that more your parents or was it like strictly one parent?
Yeah, so that was my parents for the most part. So yeah, they had a really good upbringing. I can't complain too much about that. But yeah, we traveled a lot. My dad had a job. He was a locum. He had a locum placement, so every 6 months to a year, we'd have a new job in a different place. I find it quite funny. My mum, who might watch this, messaged me because in my bio I was like, "Oh, as a kid I moved every 6 months, etc." And she's like, "Oh, if you keep saying that, someone's going to call you out. Here's a list of the places we actually lived when you grew up." And until I was 12, my average location I stayed in one place was, I think, 8 months. So I was like, okay, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but like I think there's a little bit of artistic license there. So if I'm honest, the most I moved more than once a year growing up, not every 6 months would be an accurate record correction there. But yeah, so it was because my dad would get new jobs moving around, and I was home educated, so my mum would teach me and my brothers.
Okay, how many siblings do you have? It's just you and like...
Sorry. Two older brothers, yeah. I'm the youngest of three.
I see. And I guess what places did you go to outside of Australia?
So we grew up born in Cornwall, and there was a couple of different houses in Cornwall, and that was till I was about 5, I think, 5, 6. So quite a lot of this is before I have proper amazing memories. But we also stayed in Kent, which is the south east of England. We stayed in Walsall, which is near Birmingham. We stayed in a couple of locations in Australia, sorry. We stayed in a couple of places in Cambridge. Then I moved to Birmingham for university, a few places in Birmingham, Oxford for a little while, currently in London but also there are other places within that. Like, my knowledge off the top of my head is, as a kid, you don't really keep track of where you are, but that is the basic overview of where I've moved around. So mostly around the UK. We spent some time traveling Europe, but that was really hard to remember actually how long that was as a kid. Felt like ages, but might have just been 5 days. No, it was definitely longer than that. But yeah, Australia for a year as well.
I was going to say, yeah, it seems to kind of blur together at some point too, because it's like now it's suddenly become a routine, that sort of thing. So I can see why. Yeah,
I actually get itchy feet now. I find if I stay in, and I don't know if this was just a brought up thing because one of my brothers doesn't really get it. He quite likes being settled in one location, but for me, it's now like, and it might be nature. It might be that we moved so much because my parents had a similar feeling where they'd get bored and want to move, or it might be nurture that I grew up moving and now I like moving. But it's now like, if I've been in a place a year, I'm like, been here too long. Like, a year's good. Time to go somewhere new. So even when I moved away from my parents, it's like we were in a different house. I think the longest I've stayed in a place is like 2 years.
Was that you inherit the traits that you just want to get up and go, that sort of thing? So I could see.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to, like, if I'm in one place for like more than a year, I'm like, this is pretty boring. Time to go somewhere new.
Oh, geez. Well, that's good. We're gonna have to break that habit some way, because let's see where this whole thing goes at some point too. But I know you talked about when you were in uni, you kind of went through a whole existential crisis, if you want to call it that, or depression. So I guess, did your parents and friends help you get through that?
Yeah, always. I think I was I think I was more private about it than necessarily I should have. But like, when you're like first time an adult, so like just turned 18, first time an adult, first time living by yourself, and you're not coping well, that's something that can be quite hard to admit. But I was lucky that I had a good support group, which, like, my friends, and a big part of that was Hip Hop Society, I think was one reason, because they had a group of people there who were like, and we just listened to similar music and we chatted about music, and that was and talked about like new releases coming out, so that was quite a good thing to look forward to. So yeah, I was quite lucky to have at least some people around here.
They've been pretty supportive in your little music endeavor.
I think they are my parents. I think my parents they're supportive. I don't think they like it. they always support me, but at the same time, I'd be surprised if any of them actually listen to my music. That would be surprising, but they're always very lovely about it.
I know you also talked about in the beginning, like you said, if you didn't like a song because maybe it was like too personal, something like that, do you still kind of do that in your lyrics in a way, or do you try to maybe tell a story?
I think my lyrics almost always represent part of my thought process. I'm not probably I wouldn't call myself like I'm not the most deep storytelling rapper. I think I am often quite an emotional rapper where I can talk about how I'm feeling. Like Overdose is one I'm really happy of, and that one is quite personal, where it like breaks down into like feelings of like almost like suffocation and not being good enough, etc. Or to my more braggadocious ones, which is kind of like flaunting and like kind of angry. But so I don't really tell like blow by blow stories about this thing is happening, but I think I can paint like an emotional picture quite well. But it's almost always representing things I'm thinking, often in an exaggerated context, because that's the purpose of art. Or from bits, maybe I'm remembering a feeling I had like 6 months ago, but it's almost actually with how long it takes me to release songs, it's at least 6 months ago. But it is but yeah, it's always representative of me rather than something fictional.
I think the one I really enjoyed the most was actually Deep End. And
Yeah.
can you elaborate on that one a little bit?
Yeah. So Deep End is, I think, one of those other like definitely more personal ones, where, and that one was one of the ones where I had lyrics which were sitting down on paper for like ages ago, where sometimes where it's like, yeah, because there's periods of time where I just write loads and then don't really think about turning them into songs. And then there's periods of times where I think about like making songs, and so go back. And so a bunch of the lyrics from Deep End was one I definitely was based around like some of my older writings, which was then cleaned up when I found this beat, which I think just really fit. But it was all about like, it's like the deep emotional state of like almost feeling quite neglected. And, like when you're at a party and you just realize that like, you're just not there on the same level that everyone else is. And you just like almost like disassociate and pull back away from it. And you see like everyone else like being there and you're just watching in a way despite being in the middle of it. And so Deep End represents quite a lot of that, where you're kind of like lost in yourself more than actually being present.
I do have to say, you kind of struck me as an introvert. Would you say you're pretty introverted in a way?
Yeah, definitely. I am what is kind of known as like I describe myself as a bit of a social introvert, which is almost like almost a juxtaposition of terms. But I don't really get anxious. I'm lucky that I don't get anxious in groups that much, and I can hopefully hold a fairly interesting conversation with someone I haven't met before. But at the same time, it tires me quite a lot. And so it's like I can be smiley and happy, and then like 45 minutes later, I'm like, I'm going to go and put my headphones on for the next 12 hours and not talk to anyone. And so it's like I can switch it on, and that has been a perk for like certain jobs I've had. But at the same time, I'm not someone who wants to be around people very much at all. I will be by myself in my room making my music, and then I'll pop my head out for an hour and say, hey, everyone, here's this new thing I've made, and be happy and smiley and have a launch party and go to a party and show it off, and then I'll go back in my hole again.
So we go back to his hermit hole, as we probably like to call it too. So, I can relate in some ways too, because, actually doing these sorts of things really helps me in a way, because I realized when I was doing sales, which was the door-to-door sales, which I don't recommend anybody does, to be honest, but I realized I really was not doing very good with like social interaction or anything like that. Of course, at the same time, you're trying to sell people something too, so it's not like it doesn't really click as much as it should, even though you try it like probably 10,000 times and it's like nothing really clicks as well as you hoped it would. So I get it too. That's why I also do these podcast episodes, and it helps break down that sort of introvert barrier that allows us to interact. And we've been holding this conversation for a good while now too. So, I mean, we're definitely doing something right. So that's all good.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Yeah, because you mentioned it as your hermit hole, and it's true. It's like my partner, who I live with, I'm like, if I've had a day where I've been talking to someone, I literally say, I got to go hermit now. I got to go put my headphones on and just not talk to anyone for a few hours. And I just refer to it, I got to go do my hermiting. Yeah.
Hermetology, I think we want to call it that or something. So we create
Fair
a
enough.
new university subject. There we go. So
Yeah.
that's good. Believe it or not, I got to give a shout out to Shroom T, actually, because he had told me about your music there, too. So I guess, how'd you two meet?
So streamed it, I know him quite well. So he, I'm trying to work out how we originally met. So he reached out to me a while ago, I would say over 2 years ago, probably, maybe a bit more, for a track on an album he was making, which I don't know if it's been officially announced yet, but it's still not out yet. But so I made a few verses for this album, and then we worked on a few more things, and he was throwing together a label, and he asked if I wanted to join on it. So Enigmatic Records. So I did actually for a while. I was on Enigmatic Records and had like a great time. We made some ciphers together, and he helped with a lot of the marketing of some of my tracks. So, for example, One Take, which was the one remix competition from that, was run with the help of him. And Bollywood as well with Pablo Ray was also released under Enigmatic, so my two biggest songs. And yeah, and so we worked quite well closely together. And then fairly recently, I was like, I just want to be a bit independent again, do my own thing for a little while. So we very amicably broke off, and we still talk quite a lot and still send music to each other, etc. Yeah.
He actually did point me to, I guess he has like a list of like 100 or so other artists as well. And one of them actually interviewed Diesel Clockwork. Do you know?
Diesel Clockwork. I've heard of recently, I think, but I don't know him very well.
He was actually on the show last week, and we got to get to know each other a little bit more. And it's actually good, actually talking with hip hop and rap artists too, for me, because I've always been stuck in the rock, metal, and alternative scene. So I remember actually getting used to like some of the other hip hop artists, mainly in the States, like Eminem, 50 Cent, Chamillionaire, T12, or so those sorts of groups as well. Of course, I always remember like Rick Ross and all those guys. So the thing was that my knowledge of rap and hip hop was pretty limited too. So I guess in terms of like marketing, how do you reach out to like those sorts of people who I guess aren't very familiar with your music?
Yeah, big one. Big question. Tough to crack, to be honest. It is. I don't think anyone has the answer to it, and it is something that, as a small artist, I do struggle with. Honest, but I think a big part is like just trying to get your name out there a bit. Like, it's quite easy for someone to claim to be a rapper, and so being a small rapper often gets you, let's say, dismissed quite quickly, because there are lots of people who claim to be a rapper, been rapping for a couple of months, and that's not gatekeeping. They just haven't practiced yet. And so they're like, oh yeah, I'm a rapper, please listen to all my stuff. And I did it when I just started, and I was terrible, as is the way of the world. And so claiming to be a rapper gets you dismissed quite quickly, whereas something like claiming to be in a band tends to be like, there is quite a high startup effort to that. So if someone's being in a band, they've probably already made some like decent tracks. It's probably already worth listening to. And so bridging that divide to new listeners, be it in your genre or out of the genre, it kind of has to be like, you almost have to get in their face a little bit. Like, a big part of this and why this is good is like performing at open mic nights, because there are people there who are open to the less polished acts and at the same time willing to give you a go, and there you can differentiate yourself from other acts at the time. Or small events. I've got a small festival coming up on Saturday, which I'm performing in, which hopefully will, and that's not just a rap festival. There are some rock bands there. There are some, there's a little bit of comedy, etc. So I'm hoping there will be a good place to like bridge the divide between people who aren't used to listening to like UK rap or do like rap but just don't know I exist yet. So
I see what you mean there. And actually, I was thinking a lot of the Palooza. I think that's one of the state's sort of big festivals that they do that brings like a bunch of artists together. I don't know about comedy. That actually is an interesting one because I always thought it was like different artists per se. Maybe they would have a hip hop artist on this stage, a rock band on that stage, maybe a metal one on that stage, that sort of thing too. Is it something along those lines, or is it like?
It is smaller than that. To be honest, there is one stage. So it is. So it's smaller than that. There's one stage, but it is mostly like there. I think I'm not entirely 100% sure of the set list, but I think like for this 6-hour slot, this is hip hop, and for this next X amount of time we'll be doing rock, etc. And so it runs over a couple of nights, and there are slots dedicated to artists and times and genres, I believe.
Yeah, I know, because that's what we were struggling with scheduling, because we were talking about it yesterday too, I guess. Actually, how are you feeling right now? I know you said you were kind of struggling with like a cold you got from Spain.
Yeah, so yesterday I had a pretty bad cold, a pretty bad cough. Today the cough has eased, thankfully, but I am a bit medicated right now. But I've still got like a stuffy nose, which I'm hoping isn't being too obvious in my sounds, and a bit of a headache, but otherwise doing pretty good, as well as could be hoped from yesterday, I think.
I'd say as soon as you start feeling the cold, you immediately go for the Dayquil and NyQuil sort of thing, just start chugging that all day, every day. So
yeah.
I know what you mean too, and trust me, those things always suck too. Actually, I had a little brush with COVID. It was last year, and we just got back from our trip to Nashville with me and the parents, and this is the first time I actually got it too, because I was telling myself, you went through almost 2 3/4 of a years without having to get COVID, and all of a sudden you got it because you were out partying on Broadway. So
always the way.
I know.
Always the way. Yeah.
Let's say it's a good way to go out, that's for sure. So
yeah.
I guess speaking of COVID, I guess how bad did COVID impact you and the family?
Not too bad, luckily. So my parents did heavily. I moved back in with my parents when COVID started. I was in London in a small flat, saw things coming. So a week before we were locked down, I was like, I'm getting out of here. Ran back to my parents in a slightly bigger house than a man can afford by himself. And then lockdown happened, and I was there for a while, over a year in the end. And luckily it isn't too bad. I get on well with my parents, and I work in a job where you can work remotely, as does my dad. So we had to be a bit careful about not bringing diseases home, etc. But after the initial scary bit, it started feeling quite normal quite quickly. And to be honest, my life is better now than it was before. I used that time. I made loads of music. I got really back into it. I had a period of time before COVID where I was struggling to like find the time, and then COVID happened. I had nothing to do for a year, so I made a lot of music during that time. And my job now is fully remote. And I used to really hate going into the office every single day, and I don't think the opportunity for a fully remote job would have existed without COVID happening. So in a bunch of genuinely really tangible ways, I'm very fortunate enough to say that COVID has made my life actually better. And I was lucky enough not to lose anyone, which I know some people were not so lucky, sadly. But I was definitely one of the lucky ones. I had a comfortable job which didn't abandon me. And I'm still doing okay.
That's very good to hear. I guess, did you have any brushes with COVID, or were you?
Yeah, we all got it at different varying times. So I actually had, in hindsight, I actually think I got COVID before lockdown happened. It's point one. I got quite badly ill with a fever and a cough, etc., about 2 weeks before lockdown. And then I got ill again, and this time with COVID, when the COVID test was like a year later. But that was the second time was post all of the vaccinations and something. So it kind of sucked. It sucked for a day. It was a bad flu for a day post vaccination, and then I was okay. My parents also both got it quite late as well, also after all the vaccinations, which is thankful because, yeah, they are a little bit older and a little bit less healthy due to varying reasons. So yeah, it was quite important that in the peak of it, before any vaccinations happened, we were quite careful about everything being okay.
That's very good to hear. I'm good to see it made it through. And
Yeah.
I was always careful to say, like, was there any sort of blessing in disguises too? Because normally, if you get COVID too, it's not really like the nicest thing to ever happen, to be honest. But I guess one, it allowed you more to work from home, and that was kind of the same way with me because I never worked from home either. So it gave me that chance to finally do that. Now I kind of wish it was back, to be honest. Instead, like, do you have to go in the office so many days a week?
I don't have to. No. I would not want to either. I go in occasionally. If my team wants to, for whatever reason, I'm going on Wednesday as well in a couple of days. But it's not like definitely not a regular thing. I'd say once a month, maybe a bit less, to be honest. Yeah, you said you miss it. Why is that, out of curiosity?
More so working from home because they're making me go in 3 days a week, to be honest. So
yeah.
So now I have to do like a full 12 days a month too, which is always a bummer. And the thing is like my group's like not very interactive with like clients or anything like that too. Yeah. So I'm like, what difference does it make? I mean, as long as we get the work done, why does it matter where we're working at specifically too? So that's why I said I really would like that part back because I always like getting up at, let's just say 8 in the morning and just getting out of bed, go right to the computer and just start working. So it was like, it was that easy. So yeah. And the other thing too was it allowed me to also work on YouTube and everything else too. So I guess speaking of more with COVID, I guess, did it allow you to also expand into social media and everything else?
Yeah. So I spent some time. I already had the social media account set up, but I definitely improved them during the COVID period. Social media is honestly something I find quite hard. I think, as the previous conversation has shown, I am a bit of an introvert, and I find interacting with large quantities of people quite tiring. And that's what social media is. It is a megaphone for shouting and interacting with hundreds of people at the same time. And so social media is always something I think I could do better and could be spamming my links and my music and stuff all over the place. But so I could always be doing it better. But yeah, COVID definitely helped me like start that journey a bit more, moving it a bit further. I think a series of my first like proper actual posts was around the start of COVID. Yeah,
I see. All right. And as I said before, good to have you along on the ride here, Peran. So let's see where we're at right now. I guess we can talk about the gear you use in terms of your music production. So what you got?
Yeah. Well, my gear isn't wonderful. It's not. My gear is, it could be better. But I use a Focusrite 2i2 for which my mic is plugged into. Which I believe, I actually honestly can't remember. It's an old Rode microphone I got secondhand. And that is my main setup, of which I also have like some old headphones now, which I've had for like 5 years. It has been from like very early on. I bought this one set, and occasionally bits are broken and I've replaced them, but it's not a great setup, but it's always kind of good enough. I think for me, a lot of my music, I really like the slightly distorted sound. So a lot of my tracks, Bright and Early, Overdose Again, they have this almost like radio amplified sound, and that's a sound I genuinely really love, and I think it adds a lot of texture to vocals and a lot more like audible interest, let's say. And so I've never been chasing like the perfect microphone or the perfect sound, and there's been some songs I've made where my microphone has actually broken a little bit, and my microphone broke, and then I had to like kind of tape it back together to get it back again. But I made a song during that period of time, and it sounds distorted, and I heard it, I was like, that sounds pretty good actually. I lean into it, and I'm like, actually, and so for me, gear is not. Yeah, I should upgrade my stuff now. I've been doing this enough years where it becomes time to do it. But it's like I'm always someone who like I struggle with buying things. I don't like committing to buying things at the same time, and it works, and it could be better, but yeah, not a gearhead, I think.
I mean, you always got to start off small. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I've heard good things about Focusrite 2x2 if you're not like plugging so many instruments in at once, because actually I roll with the 18920, which is one of the more higher ones of Focusrite that you could possibly get. So, I mean, you really just got to start off small whenever you did. I mean, at some point, if you feel like you got the money, then I would say, go ahead and upgrade if you're feeling it. otherwise, if you're still doing good, I mean, why upgrade? So
Yeah, it's hit the point as well now. It's where like if there is something where I want like a cleaner sound or it to be a bit better, then I'll go into a studio now, and I find myself, I record a lot of demos in my bedroom, or my not it's not even my bedroom anymore, it's my study. I record a lot of demos at home, and then sometimes I listen to the demos and they do have that raw sound. I'm like, actually no, this is good enough to ship. But now it's like, if I want that proper clean sound, instead of necessarily upgrading my home kit, I'll like rent a studio out for 4 hours, and really focus on it. And that also gives you the headspace where you can like actually perform, and you can actually like properly like shout and like scream and do weird ad libs, to really compare to like I'm quite good at like zoning out where I am and rapping, but there is sometimes where you hear your neighbor's lawnmower going and you're like, oh man, this is not the vibe for this song.
yeah, I can understand too. You tend to not like that, especially when you get background music. If it's like, say, the family's over and they're making noise upstaiars, or
Yeah.
I guess in your case beneath you, because I'm assuming this is upstairs. So
Yeah, this is yeah.
okay, fair enough. Yeah. I was trying to think. In terms of your production, do you do everything in your home studio, or do you also go to like actual studios in and around London?
Yeah, so Lid, yeah, tend to record demos in my home studio most of the time, and a number of my songs also are fully recorded in my home studio, so here in my study. But yeah, with more frequency nowadays, I am renting a studio in London. I am trying to bash out one or two songs, etc. in that moment. But I think most of it is still done in my home studio.
I guess going to those specific studios in and around London, I guess, what's that experience? What's that experience like? Do you kind of get a little nervous when you get in front of the microphone and everything?
I don't anymore, actually. I used to, but I love it, to be honest. It's just, and it's like, it's a small thing, but like, you spend a lot of time as a as an amateur rapper, to be honest, of like having self-doubt and having like imposter syndrome, and then walk in the studio and I'm like, oh no, this feels real, this is sick, everyone there is there to listen to me rap and work on my music, and they all want to be here. They wouldn't be here if like they thought it was complete garbage. And so it's just a moment of absolute clarity where I'm not thinking about anything else. All I'm thinking about is my music. All I'm thinking about is how I want to perform it, and absolutely love it. No longer feel my first time was pretty nerve-wracking. It's like your first time on stage. It's always very scary, and then you get into it and you walk away and you're like, actually no, that was probably a highlight of my day, month, week, year. Yeah.
I would say it's kind of like how the sporting events are. You always get the butterflies in your stomach when it first starts, and then as soon as the whistle blows or whatever, it's like it just goes away. And it's like we're on adrenaline now. Everything's pumping and everything too. So I can see why. Yeah, I can see why. That's pretty cool.
That's exactly it. Like, I had a friend who's turned up to a lot of my performances, etc., and he's like, when I walk up on stage, I always look so nervous, but the moment I start, then like the nerves disappear, and it's like, and at the moment I'm in the zone, and hopefully I no longer look so nervous before I start. So hopefully I'm pulling that time back earlier. But yeah, when it comes to actually performing, it's just pure focus.
That's good to hear. And I do have to ask about the mask, because on the cover of Overdose, I kind of noticed it too. I think, like, is he trying to do like a V for Vendetta sort of kind of look right there?
So yeah, so the mask is an interesting thing. It's I made it a while ago. I made it when I was in sixth form. I built a 3D printer and I used it to 3D print a mask for an event, and it glows in the dark. And I just loved it. And I just thought it was a really cool, visually interesting thing. And then when I made, I think it might have been one of the very first songs I made as Trusc, where it was like a conversation like with like myself a little bit, and the music video was like representing like a faceless version of myself, and I was like, oh, what do I do as this prop? Well, how do I represent this in a video? And so the mask came up and it just looked like a simplified faceless version, and then it was like really visually interesting, and I really liked how it looked. And then it became a way of like how do you differentiate a fairly standard looking white guy from like all of the other fairly standard looking white guys? And quite a lot of the music is still like it's still based around that vibe of like how do I represent like it's like a discussion I'm having or a representation of like I'm feeling outside myself is what the mask is representing. And it's also at the same time it's a really interesting like visual hook. It's like if you look at the cover art for Deep End, etc., is like the mask drowning, and that's a really interesting emotive thing. Or like the cover art for Power is except the mask being shattered, and it does crop up in like the music video for Overdose as well, and I think it's in the cover of Overdose. And it's just a really interesting way to say, yes, this is a Trusc work of art, but at the same time, it's like representing like everything else. Like everything else, there's me as Peran, and then there's like what the rapper Trusc, who I'm trying to battle with a little bit.
You know, we're saying like Trusc too. I'm thinking like almost like Trusted Source or something like that. So I thought you could do like Truscott Source or something like that too if you wanted to, as like an album name at some point.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting. I guess for some of your videos, would you consider doing something similar to like how Jigsaw was in Saw or V for Vendetta in those movies?
Yeah. So there's always, I mean, I love V for Vendetta, if I'm honest as well. Yeah, I would. It wasn't a direct influence, but now you're mentioning it, I do see the parallels, and it is something I read growing up, and I thought it was a really cool piece of work. So maybe some background influence there. But yeah, I always loved that kind of. I think it's unsettling. It's probably it's designed to be a bit unsettling, and it's designed to make you think. And so that sort of representation, I wouldn't do like a parody of V for Vendetta or Saw, etc. But that representation of like you don't really know what's going on there is kind of the point of it. And so that definitely carries over, and I hope, or at least I try to make it carry over into some of my music videos.
Otherwise, I think it might be like rebel against the elites, that sort of thing too. So
yeah,
like that could probably land you in hot water, to be honest too. So not sure if that's the best way to go.
That's half my music anyway.
Fair enough. I guess that's sort of a punk element as well. But the reason I thought it was Jigsaw too, I just thought maybe it would be kind of funny. It would be like turning it like this, and just like do it real slow, be like, "Hello, Peran, I want to play a little game," that sort of thing. So
yeah,
I guess were you a big fan of the horror or any of the Saw movies?
So I have seen. I think I've seen a couple of the Saw movies. I am not a massive fan of horror, if I'm honest. Gore's okay, to be honest, but there's something about suspense which really like fucks me up. Like, and it doesn't even have to be like it doesn't even have to be scary. It's like it's a weird thing. It's like, but it's like suspense I struggle to deal with. I like knowing what's going to happen, and so even if I'm watching cringe-based comedy, let's say, where it's like a comedy of errors, something is obviously going to go wrong, but you don't know what yet. That I also find similarly unwatchable as I do to finding a horror movie where you know a jump scare is going to come out, and it's like at some point something's going to go wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't want to watch this. And so like gore I don't find too bad, but it's that like lingering dread coming in from is what I really struggle with, and so I really struggle to watch those sort of things.
I would say if it's a suspense that actually grips you and like be like, oh geez, oh man, what's he gonna do right there? He's turning off the flashlight. You can't show it to the vampires or anything like that too.
Yeah,
heart's pounding and everything too. So
yeah, definitely. Like I fully respect people who love it. I quite like a lot of sci-fi / action films or books is what I enjoy quite a lot of watching. But yeah, there's something about slow burn suspense or dread, which is definitely a guy hiding behind the sofa at that.
I guess that you mentioned it. I guess do you kind of dig like the H.G. Wells sort of science fiction, or do you like some other sort of science fiction authors?
I read loads of science fiction. I really like H.G. Wells. The Time Machine is of course great. War of the Worlds. A weird one of my favorites is actually kind of horror. The Island of Dr. Monroe. I don't know how well you know all of his stuff, but that one is about like stitching up animals together to make them like humanoids. Weirdly, horror books I don't mind. Actually, I can read horror books, and it's totally fine with me. Just when it's TV for whatever reason. So yeah, loved H.G. Wells, but also like a lot of newer authors as well. Like Ian M. Banks is a big one with the Culture series, etc.
I would say I think the only one I know was The Time Machine and War of the Worlds from H.G.
Yeah,
Wells. So, and unfortunately, those are like his big writings, so to say the least. Too.
yeah.
So I don't know really anything else from him, to be honest. I have to say the one you did mention. I think I might have seen something about it. Not sure if it was just a
I
post or
think
something like that or something. What were we gonna say?
yeah, I think it was adapted into like a horror film at some point. But yeah, it's at the same time. So it's like a I don't even know how old it like 1800s sci-fi book. I find the novelty of reading old sci-fi books quite interesting and see like, oh, this is what they expected. It's because it's not just this is what they expected the future to be like, but it's also kind of like, oh, this is how they thought science worked. So it's like H.G. Wells talks about like evolution in a way that is different from how we understand it nowadays, and it talks about like invisibility and how children grow. Like there's a book where it's Food of the Gods where he talks about there's a blood composition between children in growth spurts and children not in growth spurts. And so if we can make children have their growth spurts all the time, they'll all be giants. And it's a kind of thing where it's like, and at like the 1800s, okay, this wasn't hard science, but this was still kind of the cutting edge where they were just really working out like blood composition. And so it was felt like a fairly logical leap, similar in a way where we talk about like, I don't know, like phasers and laser guns now, where we've got light, so it feels like a logical leap. But yeah,
I think in terms of logical, it's like let's just see how far we can push this thing before they start questioning that too.
yeah,
What I would say about War of the Worlds, I think that funny enough, I think this is my grandfather from my dad's side. I think he said when that story had aired on the radio waves, everybody freaked out because they're thinking that this is actually a true story. And I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know if I don't know if it happened in the UK. I know it definitely happened in the States. So there was, we could just call it the War of the Worlds scare, to say the least. So it's kind of a funny story, but I mean,
yeah.
like, it's one of those things like, really? You freaked out about that? I think you would know if the world's going to be ending.
Yeah.
We're getting overtaken by space aliens from Mars. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was represented as an actual news story, I believe, is how it started, like intentionally, because it was like an audio drama which started as like a news broadcast, and so yeah, it happened in the UK as well, apparently, where it's like people genuinely thought it was like aliens had crash landed near London. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a worldwide phenomenon, to say the least, too.
Yeah.
So that's, and I guess let's see. I think they talk about a good bit here, so I guess we'll jump into some fun questions and we'll see what else I can pop up as soon as we think through it all. So, so in terms of fun questions, I guess what would you say has been your favorite food?
Favorite food? Yeah, I mean, quite like bread. I'm quite, which is quite interesting. So I'm a big fan. Like a perfect meal would be something like a proper like nicely done steak sandwich. I think where you've got the slab of like lovely like kind of rare meat with like a bunch of veg and then like some really fresh bread. And I think that would be like, I don't think I'd ever say no to that. I think that would be like the best dinner.
I was trying to think because I work actually a second job at a restaurant where we do like steak wraps and BLTs, those sorts of ones.
Yeah.
I guess would you do something? Are you also a big fan of like wraps too?
Yeah, like yeah, I probably potentially the most boring answer I could have given to your favorite food question, but yeah, definitely a bread fan. Anything with like wraps and like fajitas, etc., or like bacon butties, etc. Just if it's in a sandwich form, I probably like it.
It's funny when you said bread fan because there actually is a band that's actually called that, and there's actually a song called Bread Fan too. So
Is there actually?
I think like, oh, he's a bread fan right off the bat too. So that's pretty cool.
I'll have to check it out.
It's actually I was trying to think it was one of those thrash metal guys back in the 80s because I know Metallica had actually covered a song from them. The actual song was Bread Fan too. So
Really?
I think they were just one-hit wonders because I think they faded to obscurity after that too. But knock yourself out, go check it out. And I guess I think you might have touched on this, but I guess what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. So I'm a big fan of Edge of Tomorrow, otherwise known as Live, Die, Repeat, which is a Tom Cruise action film where aliens crash land, and it's a big like World War III versus aliens, and Tom Cruise dies like a lot, and then it's like one of those time loop things where he dies and comes back to life and then fights aliens again. So it's Tom Cruise dying and beating up aliens for 2 hours, and it's great. It's just a really fun. It's a really fun film.
I would say it's like Groundhog Day in World War III sort of sense too. So
Yeah,
I can see why
Groundhog Day mixed with War of the Worlds, and it's sick.
it works. Actually, did they do an original one with that, and then The Edge of Tomorrow you're referencing is a remake?
No, so it was based on a graphic novel which I haven't read. All You Need Is Kill, but Edge of Tomorrow, Live Die Repeat is the name of it, but it's like they really fucked up the marketing. Like it was called Edge of Tomorrow, but all of the marketing was called Live Die Repeat, which is a much cooler name, and it was based on a book called All You Need Is Kill, which is a much cooler name as well. And I don't know why they went with Edge of Tomorrow to make it sound the most generic ever. But no, it is one film. They're apparently making a sequel, but I think that was stuck in production hell for like 5 years. So
Yeah, the good old development hell. I think that's what they call it. They call it development hell, or
oh yeah,
something like that. I don't know. We use different terminologies between the States and the UK, so
yeah.
I can see why. Actually, did you watch the War of the Worlds? I guess the original one they did. I assume it was the 1950s or 60s, and then they did one for 2005 where Tom Cruise was actually in it.
I watched the Tom Cruise one, and I must confess I didn't like it very much.
Ooh.
It was it felt a very American drama, where it's like, I think one thing that's I really liked about the book is that it's one guy walking through like the wastelands of the world by himself, contemplating on like his life and how he's going to get through this, and some characters he meets along the way, and desperately trying to like. And then the American felt like a fairly generic action flick, where it kind of like, I think, removed some of the like interesting character drama that the first War of the World, the book has so much. I haven't seen the original. I don't know if there's an earlier film. I haven't seen it if there is, but yeah, I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to that, to be honest.
Fair enough. Actually, I remember meeting a friend of mine back when it was the Tom Cruise one was originally going to come out. I just remember being scared out of my mind, thinking like, this looks kind of creepy. Actually, I don't know. In fact, I always want to say the marketing always presented the tripods differently, because it seemed like you're just seeing the tentacles and they're kind of like throwing these people like all over the place, that sort of thing too. I'm thinking like, I'm kind of scared, to be honest. So I'm curious what this is like.
Yeah,
you'd be right. And you know what? For a while, I actually did watch it. It was like one of my top movies for a good while. Then eventually it just dropped off, because afterwards it's like one of those things that gets old, and then I want to move on to like other movies, that sort of thing too. So
yeah.
All right.
Have you read it, or the original audio drama, etc. of War of the World, out of curiosity?
Read the book?
Yeah.
How far did I get? I did have it, and I remember reading it. I want to say I did finish it the whole way through. I don't know if I sped read it near the end, to be honest, because I think I was trying. When I was young, though, too, I wasn't very good with like the text when it was like they were kind of scrunched in there like that sort of thing too. Maybe I wasn't like a good reader back then, but I think I do remember reading it, and I probably should have at least enjoyed it a little bit more, to be honest.
It's all right. I mean, it's an 1800 book, so a book over 100 years old, I reckon, is quite hard for some people to get into.
I don't think it was so much the age. I think it was just like how long it kept like dragging per se, and maybe I didn't understand what was going on. I won't say tangents when it's like describing like what the character is going through. For instance, maybe he's going through an existential crisis, that sort of thing too. So
yeah,
but I do remember reading it. I will tell you that much to answer your question. So all right. In terms of your drinks, both an alcohol and non-alcoholic, which one would you say are your favorite for each one?
Non-alcoholic. I drink loads of non-alcoholic. I got really into, I think, Dandelion and Burdock is one of my favorite non-alcoholic drinks. That's quite hard to come by nowadays. But that one's probably my favorite non-alcoholic drink. And favorite alcoholic drink, probably just a crisp cider, I would say.
That's pretty cool. You know, every time I hear cider, I immediately think of like those apple ciders. I don't know. Do you guys got your own brand there?
Yeah. So cider is apple cider but we have loads in the UK. I think we're like the biggest drinker of apple cider in the world or something. But we have we have not all the time, but like pubs will always sell like 3 or 4 different types of apple cider, and you can have like cider bars where they just sell loads of ciders. But yeah, I just think it's really refreshing, like a crisp cider in summer. It's like really, really refreshing.
I'd say the ones I always get was the Angry Orchards. I'm assuming you guys sell it over there too. I'm assuming it's a global brand
Angry
now.
Orchard? I don't think we do. I don't think we have Angry Orchards.
Oh my gosh, that's blasphemy, man! What is wrong with you people? That sort of thing. So
No, we have. I'm trying to think of. We have like loads. Like we have Strongbow, which is the kind of low tier stuff.
I do remember drinking that. That was a good one.
Yeah, we have stuff like Old Moot is a very fruity cider. Thatcher's is very good. Thatcher's Gold, etc. It's very good cider. But no, I don't think we have Angry Orchard, or at least not commonly.
I think they stopped selling the Strongbow here because I don't think I've been seeing it recently. But I remember the Patrick Stewart commercials and those are real odd ones too.
Yeah.
Just to kind of like be a good excuse to just kind of rip on Patrick Stewart. So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
National treasure.
But Angry Orchard was one of my favorites, and I have tried Strongbow too. I would say Reds, I don't think I was very crazy about, to be honest, but I did try it. But I would say Angry Orchard and Strongbow, those two I can definitely live with too. So, and the last one.
If I ever go to the US, I'll look out for Angry Orchard.
I would say try the Green Apple. The Green Apple's to kill for, actually. So,
Okay.
well, I mean, normally the saying goes it's to die for, that sort of thing too. But I mean, either way, somebody's going to die. So. So,
as long as there's blood, I'm happy.
Yeah, blood and gore. How about that? Blood and gore. All right. And the last one. What is currently your favorite song, or a song you've been listening to a lot?
My favorite song,
or one you've been listening to a good bit?
Yeah, I think so. It's actually quite old now, but "Favorite Color Is Blue" by Robert DeLong, I think, where it's like it's an alt rock song with like K-Flame made as well, and it's very alternative, but it is it came out like 3 years ago, maybe more, and I just absolutely loved it when it first came out, and it's really interesting. It's got loads of like changes in like timings and like speeds, and it's got that really like vocal distortion, which I love, and the entire track is like every single word of it is like harmonized by Robert E. Long and K-Flay, so it's like 2 vocal layers throughout the entire track, and some of the lyrics I find really interesting. I just love it. I think it's almost a perfect song, to be honest. But if it's one I'd recommend anyone listens to. It's like, yeah, Favorite Color Is Blue by Robert DeLong. It's amazing. I
will say I never heard that one before, but I think in terms of like best song written, I think John Lennon with his song "Imagine" was like, well, many people or critics would say like the best one ever written, to be honest. But I don't know. I never heard
very different very different is John Lennon to this. But yeah, that's also a good song. Yeah, you should listen if you like alt rock, etc. It's very electronic, to be honest, is this one, but yeah, you might like it. I think most people I've shown it to have liked it to like a either from that's pretty cool to no, that's really good. I don't think I've shown anyone who's been like, nah, that's garbage. So yeah, give it a go.
Well, that's all we keep it that way, to be honest too. But I think I'll check it out. So maybe after we're done here, maybe just send me the name and I'll check it out. So.
I will do, yeah.
All right. So, Peran, we're near reaching the end of my podcast right here. We're down to the last question. Did you have any questions for me or any last words you want to say before we jump into it?
No, not at all. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast. That's all.
I would say when I eventually get back to London, maybe we should get together, have a nice little cider drinker or something like that too. So, but I would say
definitely let me know.
But I would say, what would you recommend to visit in terms of London whenever you're here?
In terms of London, depends what you're into. I think some experiences which are unique to London, I would say, like lots of experiences are like similar in other places of the world. Like the National History Museum, everyone says is great, but lots of places have good museums. But one thing I think is like fairly unique to London is the Globe Theatre, which is the Shakespeare Theatre, and that is built, and you can go see a play there. I think that's very remarkable if you're like into theaters and that's something that's sick. But also just like some of the like gig venues in London are absolutely insane. I guess every city says they have great gig venues, but like some of them feel like really cool, and like these old historic venues which still have like small indie bands in them, and you can just walk into like a random pub and find live music. I think London has a really sick live music scene and a sick theatre scene, and I would definitely just spend some time just walking around central London on a Friday night and just walking to the ones which actually have like live music playing, just listening to them.
I would say, yeah, because UK has been known for like a lot of the music scenes, especially when you had the Beatles and the Stones back in the day, and then you got into more of the heavier metal eventually with Black Sabbath, and then you kept taking it up a notch too when you got Napalm Death and all those other guys. So
yeah,
you guys definitely have the music scene, that's for sure. And I would say the one thing, actually two things I forgot to mention when we were talking about trips earlier was we were in Parliament when they were at a session, so they allowed us to take a tour of that. Then also we're in the London Eye, so
yeah,
along the River Toms, so that was pretty nice. But so I guess which bar would you say is like the best one, or pub, or whatever the name they kind of like to use?
So the best, well, bars and pubs are slightly different, but the best. Oh, that's such a hard question. I think one of the most generically fun ones, which is gonna make me sound a bit trashy, is a place called Rowan's up in Finsbury Park, which is like a bowling alley, which is a nightclub, and so you can bowl till 4 a.m. while getting pissed. And they also have like table tennis tables and live music sometimes, and that is just like a characterful night. If you ever go to Rowan's, it's always going to be like bizarre and crazy and memorable. Like there'll be people bowling blackout drunk at 3 a.m. There'll be like karaoke bars down the hall you'll see singing. There'll be live music some days. It's absolutely mad. It's absolutely...
I mean, I think the most memorable ones is where we were doing those WTF sort of moments too. So I think it's why too. All right, I think when we're back there, I think we'll check it out. So, but that was definitely not the last question. I know I got threw a couple at you at the last second there, but all right. So here's the last one. So, given what COVID has done, I think these days people kind of go through something similar to what you went through with depression, maybe some sort of existential crisis too. So for those people, as well as the musicians, what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we move forward in a post-COVID world?
I think, like, currently there's a lot of gloom and doom on the news, and I think it can be hard, but like the world is getting better. Like, change is happening. People's quality of life is coming. Sometimes it's slower than we like. Sometimes there are setbacks, but as a whole, like, life's not that bad and it's getting better. And finding your moments of joy inside this big sea of like craziness is like, that's all that matters. And just like finding those moments and clinging onto it.
Spoken like a true prodigy. So hopefully we gave you some ideas for some music going forward. So I'll have to see what happens once this is all edited and everything too. So, all right.
I look forward to seeing it. Yeah.
Eventually. So, Peran, we've reached the end of my podcast right here. Do you have any final words or any shout outs you want to say before we close?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like I said, this has been great, a lot of fun. Look forward to hopefully maybe doing 1-2 years down the line when we're both huge, and that'll be a lot of fun as well. But yeah, I am dropping a new song, Reichenbach, which is dropping this week and may already be out by the time this podcast is released. And make sure to follow me on Spotify and YouTube, both under the name Trusc, spelled Trusc.
Are you on any other social media, or are you just strictly using Spotify and YouTube?
I am also on Instagram at official.trusc and TikTok at official.trusc. Instagram is probably the social media which I am active on the most. TikTok less so than I should be, and YouTube is where all of the music videos are posted.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to keep backing away from TikTok, to be honest, since it was quote unquote made in China, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it also kind of messed with our attention span too, because now everybody wants to just do those short videos, especially on YouTube with the YouTube Shorts. So I don't know. Yeah. Everybody tends to get into weird habits from time to time too. So, all right.
Yeah, definitely.
So everyone today, my guest was Peran Truscott. Yeah. Peran, thank you again so much for coming on. Stay safe.
All right.
Stay tuned,
you too. Have a good one. Bye.